Welcome to another episode of Behind the Seams with George Courey. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the surgical industry. And who better to have this conversation with than our very own Director of Surgical Solutions, Cort Naab. Cort, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. And thank you for having me to Montreal. Always enjoy visiting.
You like the podcast?
I do.
I built it myself. No,
you did. I don't believe that.
No, definitely
I don't
not.
believe
Definitely
that.
not.
Textiles, yes. Building podcast, probably not. But it's a great studio.
What I do know how to do is build up new initiatives for the company, which surgical was one of them. So we started this a little while ago on the surgical side. It was a very interesting journey to get to where we are today. So it started off with basically a need from the industry. There was a very, very strong program in place for many, many years. And then that brand decided to exit the industry, and it created a whole gap in the marketplace that I recognized a few years back someone needed to serve. And then
a few years back. Like back when you did your master's thesis on reusable surgical.
This was like one of my master's finals paper was on reusable surgical and the economics behind it and how to build a program, how to build a business. And here we are. It's almost, 10 years later, and we're still plugging away, right?
Yeah. I mean, a passion for it, right? Like you knew you were going to do this one day. And I think you have been leading George Courey in this direction for a while in Canada and now into the US.
And there's no better time than now to really get into this space because it hits so many elements that hospitals and healthcare laundries are looking for, right? And we're going to get into a lot of that today. But so tell us a little bit about maybe your day-to-day as Director of Surgical Solutions. So you have a bunch of different things that you're responsible for, one of which is developing the program, another one of which is handling any customer requirements, and developing new projects with customers. Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day. What are you busy with these days in Director of Surgical Solutions world?
We have a few different initiatives going on where we've always got R&D, but primarily one of the biggest things is getting the FDA approvals to get into the US. We've recently, as you know, as the CEO, you know this, but our podcast listeners might not. We've gotten pretty much all of our FDA approvals for the full line. Mm-hmm. So, surgical, it's not just one product. They're medical devices, and they cover L2 gowns, L3 gowns, L4 gowns, drapes, sterilization wrappers, and many of those require FDA. It's called 510K.
Okay, so heavily regulated area.
Especially in the US, regulated in Canada as well. Mm-hmm. So, the advantage was the product lines existed and the data existed. Mm-hmm. But getting into the US market means dealing with, getting through the FDA hurdles.
Right. And rightfully, right? Like it's not the type of product that you want just anybody making. There's a very large regiment that you have to go through to make sure that products comply with the standards that are set, right? So as much as we like to say, FDA takes time and everything, but it's actually really with a purpose. And there's a very good reason for that, right?
It is. And the FDA is, I would say, the gold standard. So, you'll see companies come into the Canadian market. Very few of them that then make the decision to go to the US market because of that high bar. Yeah. So, it's important to go into the US. With FDA approvals, but even our Canadian customers see that as we jumped through the high, jumped over the high hoop, right, so to speak.
And so much
speaks volumes to what you've committed, the company is committed to putting into this.
Right. Even especially in a post-COVID world, right, where in COVID there was all kinds of companies starting to make PPE and different protective garments for healthcare workers, especially because out of necessity, right? There was just a lack of them, and so we needed them. And I think that we learned a lot that there's very good PPE and there's some that do cut corners, and those are the ones you want to stay away from. So we've really been dedicated to doing things the right way, right? And so as tedious as it is, and as a financial impact it can have to do things the right way, it's 100% the way we're going, right?
It is. And it's unfortunate we can't show the podcast listeners or viewers, but we've even put a full laboratory in George Courey. So we're able to do synthetic blood penetration testing, hydrostatic pressure testing. It's It's fun. I've got my own lab coat. I think even your son has his own
Yeah,
lab
you
coat.
made one for my 6-year-old. That's so good.
And he's going to be a scientist one day.
There you go. Yeah, he loves that little lab.
Or running George Courey. One of the two.
Right. So talk to us a little bit about that. So you mentioned a synthetic blood penetration test. So why are things like that needed for this kind of product line?
Yeah. So PB70 standards that were laid out. They're the basis for surgical products. So they tell doctors when you're doing, procedure X, you need this much protection. And the PB70 standards lay out the levels of protection. So level 2 means that it meets 20 centimeters of water column. It can
pressure.
Withstand. They measure pressure in water column, 20 cm of water column. Level 3 is 50 cm. And then level 4, the highest level of protection, which you see in a lot of high-end level 4 gowns, but also drapes. Those require viral penetration testing.
Okay.
And before we do viral penetration, we do synthetic blood testing, synthetic blood penetration as a precursor.
Okay.
All of our surgical products, of course, have gone through biocompatibility and cytotoxicity, but really, I think the number of tests it's a lot. It's impressive, but what we probably do the best with is just the economic impact and
well, that's it. So we can get into that a little bit, because obviously everything we're talking about is reusable, right? So at George Courey, we don't sell any disposable single-use surgical products. And I think that's a big differentiator in the market. And you're talking about all these things, all these big words that I barely know what they mean. That's all part of building confidence, right, in the customer base and in the user to know that, yes, this is a garment that has been washed, processed, sterilized multiple times over, but I know that these kinds of protocols are being followed, and so I have confidence that this garment will protect me. Whereas on the single-use disposable side, right, similar kind of protocols, but they go through maybe not as rigorous of a check that the reusables do. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how do you differentiate the two in terms of quality and confidence of the user?
Yeah, what's really interesting is one of the questions we'll get frequently when talking about the disposable versus reusable, especially from IPs, from surgical nurses, is safety. So they look at it and they go, disposable are safer. They must be safer because they come in a brand new package.
Right.
And they're brand new.
I'm opening the bag for the first time. Yeah.
The reality is reusable surgical products are inspected every single time. Complete after they're laundered, they're inspected. They go through sterilization with both bio and chemical strips that test to make sure the sterilization was effective. Disposable products, if you look at the AQL standards, they might be testing, 5, 10, 50 out of a lot of 100,000.
Right.
And then, they're typically sterilized in a lab in China. There's been recalls because of wood chips, because of bugs, because of all sorts of things, issues there. And then they're put in a container and shipped here. So yeah, a reusable gown may have been reprocessed here, but it's reprocessed to, typically in a HLAC accredited plant or a hygienically clean accredited plant where they have very high standards for their wash processes. And then it goes through, a pack room where it's fully inspected, repacked. And though the gown has been used before, the I'm going to call laundry in the U.S. is manufacturing, and in Canada, it is domestic manufacturing. So it is reprocessed to a very high standard and very safe.
So, and then what about for the user itself? So in terms of, definitely safety, we just went through that. There's very, very rigorous checks on every single use that the gown is used. And how about like the comfort level and the breathability of the reusable product versus the disposable product?
So there's been a few studies on this. And one of the most key ones is breathability, right? So our gowns, just like your rain jacket at home, you may have a rain jacket that has a laminate. They're made up with a membrane that allows certain size particles to pass through, including water vapor. Because of that, they're breathable to an extent. While they offer the level 4 protection or the level 2, they also offer breathability. That equates to comfort for doctors, especially in a long surgery. Another thing that they offer is it's not uncommon to hear about disposable products tearing during surgeries, which is not only a safety issue, but it means the doctor needs to go and change their gowns. Reusable don't tear. They have their tensile strength and their tear strength is so much higher. They're really a better product and a more comfortable product for the doctors.
Okay, so safer, more comfortable. So why is it that still the vast majority of the healthcare surgical market in North America is on the single-use disposable program? Why is that?
So I think we need to acknowledge that in Canada, that's not true.
Okay.
You're Canadian.
Right.
And Canada.
So in Canada
is heavy on reusable, except for certain provinces. They really have grasped it, along with, we jump over the ocean. We get Italy and we get the UK. They have big reusable surgical programs. And then you get the US and France and other developed countries that have virtually no. I've heard 5-10% reusable. Which is super unfortunate.
Reusable, which means 95% disposable single use.
And I've never seen a statistic that I can say was backed, but I'll tell you it's definitely a low percentage of reusable in the US.
Okay, so why do you think that is?
There's a few reasons. Probably the primary one is absolute easy. So, we get past the safety, even economically reusable makes sense. We can talk about that, but ultimately, hospitals went through a staffing issue. So MDRs need to be staffed. Laundries provide non-sterile. Typically, there are laundries that sterilize, but in the US, it's usually a non-sterile pack, which means the hospital needs to sterilize it.
Right.
That does take some labor. The other thing is the disposables offer almost unlimited configurations. So if you're Dr. A and you prefer to have 4 OR towels in your pack for this surgery and Dr. B prefers 6, they can make that adjustment. With reusable, you really have to standardize surgical procedures.
So even with all that, though, when it boils down to it, the economic side of it, can you walk us through a little bit of that? I mean, I've looked at this extensively, and we know that if you're just looking at the first cost of like a disposable, let's call it level 4 surgical gown versus a reusable level 4 surgical gown, the first cost of each, the reusable is definitely more expensive, right?
Yeah.
But then if you look at it, right, at the cost per use, even including processing costs and the extra labor you may need at the hospital for the sterilization, the reusable program absolutely destroys the disposable program when you look at the lifetime cost of the program, correct?
Absolutely. So typically 30 to 50% cost savings to go to reusable.
Right.
I can get into more details on that, but I'm actually doing a presentation that you volunteered me to do on the economics of reusable surgical gowns at Clean Show. So I think, for a deeper dive, I'd say come to the ARTA ALM presentation on that.
Hopefully we air this podcast before then. If not, you can go back in time.
Hopefully we hear that before then.
There you go.
But ultimately there was a study done, and even the worst hospital group, the one that was getting the fewest reuses out, they were seeing 20 reuses. The vast majority of the groups were seeing 50, 40, and 50 reuses.
Okay.
Even at 20, they were seeing significant cost savings.
Even at 20
reuses. And our gowns are made to be reprocessed 50, 60, 70 times.
Right.
So I think it's important to note that even in the worst case where you're ragging out, you're not repairing, maybe the laundry isn't processing correctly, there's still savings.
Right.
And just as important, the ORs in hospitals are the absolute worst contributors to trash. So after a procedure, bags of garbage go down to the dumpsters.
Right.
That's all going to a landfill.
I don't care what people
say.
In a world where hospitals are increasingly becoming conscious of their ESG mandates, right? And a lot of boards even and C-suite is dictating this throughout the hospital. To say that the OR is one of the largest contributors to waste or textile waste, but also general waste in a hospital. I mean, what an easy check to check a box to say, hey, we're meeting these ESG initiatives and we're making a safer environment for our users as well as a more comfortable environment. I mean, it kind of checks a lot of boxes, right?
It does. Every surgical suite, they have a laundry bin,
right?
Whether it's in the or just outside of it or near it, but there's a laundry bin very close. So I've heard the argument that, well, then we have to separate the trash from the reusable textiles. They already do it. The patient came in with a patient gown on, so it's a couple extra pieces that they have to remember to put in the laundry. But laundries are very capable of processing fluid soaked, so it can have blood on it, it can have all of that, and laundries are the healthcare laundries are designed to process that. So
okay, so let's focus a little bit now on the healthcare laundry themselves. So you've worked in healthcare laundries throughout your career. How can healthcare laundries view this as an opportunity for them? Maybe an extra revenue stream, or maybe a value add for their clients. How should they be looking at this, and how do you get started for the healthcare laundry that's listening to this and saying, you know what, I'd love to start this, but it seems like a big project. We don't really know where to begin. We don't have the autoclaves. We don't really know how to get started. What would you suggest to those guys?
Well, first, I'd back up and I'd say, why would a laundry want to do this? And they have their customers, and general linen, you are pulling. You're pulling as tight as you can to get the couple of cents out of general linen. Surgical is a value add that you get to sell to a customer that you already have a relationship with. Running a business, I mean, is it cheaper to go find a new customer or to sell the one that you already know and have a relationship with?
Certainly. Growing the product lines within a customer, yes.
So this is a value add that you can grow within the customer base you already have. It's a high value item, and it does take some attention, though. I mean, you can't just say, I'm going to do it. You need the hospital's commitment to doing it. So I think the reason laundries should want to get into it, is in a market that's very competitive on general linen, it can differentiate them. Right.
And I think that's a little bit part of what you're doing for George Courey, right? Is you're saying to these healthcare laundries, listen, it's not scary. It's not as big and crazy as a project as it seems. We're there to help you, right? And we help initiate projects. We help go through it's like kind of like a consulting mandate to put all of the economics together, even go sell the program to the hospitals along with the laundry. That's part of what you've been doing, right? And seeing some success and some conversion. Some hospitals are saying, hey, you know what, maybe we should be paying attention to this right now.
It is. It's a good time to be doing it. And to answer your previous question, so we do come in, we do some consulting. If you want to get into adding autoclaves into a laundry, big project. And it's probably not the direction that most laundries looking to get in this want to go, nor is it the direction that most laundries in it already have gone. So most of them, like I said earlier, provide non-sterile packs, which means a climate controlled room that meets certain standards. Again, HLAC spells out the standards based on ANSI ST69. It doesn't really matter what the number is, but there's an actual standard for reprocessing of surgical textiles.
Okay, that's
well spelled out. You need a room that's climate controlled, that has good lighting. You need some light tables to do inspections, and you need medical device manufacturing device instructions.
Yeah, you know what? But certainly, even with all of that, certainly it's an area in which all healthcare laundries should be exploring today, because I think Arda says it best. It's choose reusable because the future is not disposable. And so we're talking about that as a be all end all for the program. But when you add in the economics of it, the breathability, the comfort level, etc., it's kind of a no-brainer for many. So Cort, thanks for joining us today. I think we did a little bit of a deep dive into the reusable surgical industry. Keep doing what you're doing, because it's important work, and it's something that I'm very proud of George Courey, that we've taken on as an initiative. And I think that the future is very bright in this space. So Cort, thanks very much for joining us and adding a little bit to the value add of this program.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Cort.